Hi, Mr. Allen and Mr. Chris. I am Yu Zhan. The other days when I was reviewing the interviews we had on Skype, I realized that you were trying to ask me a question about what makes VR games fun and what are the essential advantages of virtual reality games against video games and other VR games. At that time, I had the key ideas, but I was too hurried to answer, so I'm very unsatisfied about the answer I gave to you. I used the last few days to sum up my ideas and experiences into this presentation, and I wish that you will enjoy watching it. So let's get started with a brief outline about what this presentation will cover. To begin with, I would like to introduce the background by comparing and contrast with video games and a brief history. Secondly, there are two major paths of game design, so I would like to illustrate the representation and gameplay of virtual reality games, respectively. Furthermore, there are other advantages like sharing, asymmetric and uncertainty design, multiplayer, and so on. So let's start our introduction. There is an ancient Chinese saying, "Use history as a mirror, and you will know the rise and decline." To help us understand the virtual reality game better, we need to compare and contrast with the video games first. I still remember the first lecture I had about game design. The lecturer told me that we can never create fun, but we can provide the players with a system of challenges and let them have fun solving them. And all these challenges shall be inspired by the reality. But the reality is too complicated, so we need to simplify the reality to video games. One of the first created video games, Tennis for Two, simplified the reality of tennis onto a video game on oscilloscope. But now, we are utilizing the technologies developed for video games and simulate the reality and call it virtual reality. But why? There are two essential differences between video games and virtual reality games: the means of showing the world and the methods of control. While video games are using monitors and screens, virtual reality games are using helmet-mounted display and a panoramic view to show a virtual world. On the other hand, I have to admit that with decades of revolution, keyboards and mouses are very effective methods of control, but they are not immersive enough for VR games. And this picture is a very good illustration with the Oculus Rift Customer version 1. Associated with the game design, HMD gives better advantages to representation because it enhances the immersiveness and aesthetics. In addition, methods of control is associated with gameplay, and it provides us more opportunity in mechanics and dynamics design. I will illustrate the representation and gameplay in detail later. When I was attending the lectures about virtual reality game development, the lecturer was always mentioning one keyword: experiences. What is experiences, and why we shall focus on experiences in virtual reality games? To answer these questions, we need to talk about the brief history of VR games first. So please bear in mind these questions, and I will talk about them in the beginning of representation. The terms virtual reality and helmet-mounted display was created in 1950s and 1970s respectively. From the picture of one of the first virtual reality machine, it's really hard to imagine that we can shrink the size of this device and put it in a helmet. And by the way, there was no desktop at that time, so this is only the machine for display. It still relies on another room-sized computer. There is no point for us to illustrate the history of VR games in detail, so I will just focus on the recent VR revolutions I have experienced. And this is the timeline. It starts from 2010 and ends now. In 2010, the term virtual reality is still not well known for players. But I have my first experience of VR games because of one Japanese computer scientist. there was an innovative product produced by Microsoft called Kinect. It captures a matrix of depth graph in front of you using infrared ray. These computer scientists attach a Kinect to the HMD, so the Kinect is capturing the RGB video and send it to the HMD so the player can see the real world. At the same time, it's utilizing the depth graph and augmented reality technology to add in some 3D characters into the virtual world. And the Kinect also captures the movement of the player's hands, so he can also interact with the 3D characters. I was really amazed by this idea, so I bought the devices and tried his project myself. In 2012, the company Oculus was founded, and they decided to demonstrate their first prototype in E3 at the same year. They released their first product, Development Kit 1, on the next year. At that time, they was only funded by the Kickstarters. This is really such a revolutionary product, because VR devices does not simply mean put two screens and panoramic view in front of you. It created many customizations, including the interpupillary distance, the focus distance, and the motion blurring technology. 2 years later, Facebook see the potential of VR devices and bought the Oculus company. This is the first time VR devices is seriously funded. And after Facebook, Google, Sony, Apple, HTC, Samsung all started their products about virtual reality. In the same year, Oculus released their second product, DK2. This time they added the positional tracking technology, and these devices is already very similar to the current VR devices. This is also the first device that I developed VR games with. Utilizing the Oculus DK2, I developed a VR game simulating the battle in Attack of Titans. However, Oculus Rift DK2 didn't provide a method of control, so at that time there was a bloom of controllers. The most representative product is called Razer Hydra. There was a base station, and it sends out magnetic waves to detect the position of both controllers. Secondly, the Leap Motion is a small-sized Kinect, and when you put it on the desk, it detects your hand gestures above it, so you can do any magic tricks. It could also be attached to a HMD so that it detects the hand movement in front of you in the virtual world. Last but not least, Myo is a wristband, and it is attached to your upper arm, so it could measure the movement of your muscle and make a very good predict of your hand gestures as well. I tried and made prototypes with all these controllers, and finally decided to produce my game of Attack of Titans utilizing Razer Hydra. In 2015, another revolutionary product was released called HTC Vive. It's the first VR devices that drains the performance of the best desktop at that time. It requires an i7 processor and GTX 970 graphic cards. And is also the first product that allows the players to move in a room-sized playzone. It also provided the players with two position-tracked controllers. Last but not least, it's the first VR device that cooperated with the largest video game platform, Steam. There was no vital revolutionary milestone since 2015, but we were working on some very attractive ideas, including the motion capture, the treadmill, Haptic Vest, and all-in-one devices. And there are also data about the VR devices has been constantly improved, including the field of view, the resolution, the refresh rate of the screens, and frame per second of the software. There are better tracking accuracy and less transmission delay. There are less weight of the device and larger room size for the players. Another significant improvement of VR devices is wireless. Both of the largest company, Oculus and HTC Vive, has their own strategy. The newest product of Oculus, called Oculus Go, was using the technology of all-in-one machine. It gets rid of the dependency of desktop, but it also has no access to the high performance anymore. On the other hand, the HTC Vive Pro was working with Intel and developed a technology called WeGig. It transmits data in 60 GHz, which is 10 to 20 times faster than the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. As I mentioned, the Oculus Go performs like a smartphone, so HTC Vive Pro performed 30% better in terms of the resolution and refresh rate of the screens. Oculus Go provides the players with infinite play zone. However, it is losing the advantage of position tracking. At the same time, HTC Vive Pro allows the players to play in a 100 square meters play zone. This is the end of the introduction. Last time when I was talking with Mr. Chris, he mentioned that he believes that he had a lot of useless experiences, but I do not really agree. Although the experience could be too old to help you make decisions directly, this unique knowledge of the detailed history could enhance your insight and help you predict the game trend better. So I have been trying and studying for more than 100 VR games. This is just part of the most impressive ones, and I will mention some of them as instances in the following presentation. Representation is one of the major paths of game design. And let's start by explaining the term experiences. In my opinion, experiences is referring to a series of games that focus on representation. Most of them have rather simple or zero gameplay at all. There are two reasons for this. The first reason is because of the sense of immersiveness. The representation of VR game is much more attractive than video games. The first example is Racket Fury Table Tennis VR. It's one of the best sellers in Steam VR, and it have a very good simulation about the sport table tennis. But it has some shortcomings. To begin with, it's not as healthy as playing table tennis in real world, because the weight of the headset and wires could exert certain pressure on your neck and lower back. In addition, you cannot talk and go to dinner together with your friend after the game. There is no doubt that it's not worthy to simulate an easy-to-obtain experience. But the table tennis VR have its own advantages. First of all, what if I have a friend thousands of miles away back in China and I want to play table tennis with him? Secondly, what's the chance that I can compete with the best table tennis players all over the world? Furthermore, it saves a lot of time and money to find a table tennis table in a crowded city. There are two kinds of experiences very popular in VR games. The first kind of experiences exist in real world, but they are really hard to obtain. For example, Fruit Ninja VR. You can call a series of friends throwing the fruits towards you and you cut them all using the katana, but it could be a waste and dangerous and exhausting. In Payday 2 VR, you act as the best robbers of the world. So you rob the street, rob the banks, and fight against the cops. Another instance is Everest VR. It provides you the experience of climbing the highest mountain in the world without any danger. On the other hand, there are also experiences that never exist in the real world. For example, Deadwood Mansion and Curse of Davy Jones of Sandbox VR are providing fantasy VR experiences. There is another game called Everspace. It provides a unique experience of driving the spaceship and fighting the aliens in the galaxy. The other reason that most early VR games are focusing on the experiences is because that there was no official method of control before the HTC Vive is released in 2015. I remember that there were a lot of VR games trying to simulate the experience of roller coasters. However, I really hesitate to admit that they are VR games, or they are just machine-generated VR videos, because most of them really have zero gameplay. You just sit and experience. It will be much better to allow the players to adjust the tracks and craft his own roller coaster. Don't Let Go is one of the most famous VR games in 2014. The gameplay is quite simple. You just put both of your hands on the desk and press the control keys. Then you will go through a series of horror experiences. The only challenge is just don't let go. There could be a giant dinosaur breaking into your room, or there could be a giant spider climbing on your arms all the way to the back of your head and make some noise there. It's really interesting to try. Although the focus on representation have changed in the recent years, and I will talk about it in the gameplay session, the history of VR games reveals that representation is one of the essential advantages of VR games. To be more specific, immersiveness is a key idea of VR games, and there are several ways to enhance it. First of all, the user interface is the first element that the player will encounter when he enters the VR game. And my lecturer used to tell me that there is something wrong if the player realizes the existence of UI. So I believe VR games have great advantage in UI design because it's easy to keep them immersive. And here are two examples, the Fruit Ninja VR and Job Simulator. In Fruit Ninja VR, the buttons are designed to be fruits, and you cut them to select. While in Job Simulator, when you first enter the game, you will select the level stored in a series of cartridges, and you insert it into the machine. Pulling the trigger will load this level. Secondly, a good level design could also enhance the immersiveness of the VR game. In my opinion, we need more checkpoints in VR games, because we need to allow the players to pause and exit whenever they feel tired or motion sickness. Only in this way, we can maintain the immersiveness and the feelings of this experience of players. Furthermore, I'm aware that there is a trick in the industry that is always design more buttons to exit than continue, but I found it very annoying in VR games. What's more, changing the environment or at least changing the time of the day can keep the freshness of the game. However, we need to be careful about the conjunctions between levels and make sure that the design of transition does not destroy the immersiveness. There is a little trick to enhance the immersiveness in VR games, and it is making good use of the horror elements and darkness, just similar to what the game Deadwood Mansion did. This trick not only enhances the 3D modeling and makes the game look better, but also increases the intense emotional fear of the players, so they will become ignoring the surroundings and easier to be immersive. Fourthly, designing a good method of control is also significant to the immersiveness. I will provide one negative example, Everspace VR, and a positive example, Cat Explorer. As I mentioned, Everspace VR is providing a great experience of exploring the galaxy. However, it only allows the player to control the spaceship with mouse and keyboard or Xbox controllers, and it really breaks the immersiveness for me. I can quickly imagine two better designs. The first one is providing the player with a joystick, so the player will enjoy driving the spaceship like driving a helicopter. On the other hand, we can also provide the player with a series of buttons on the control panel, so that he can press the buttons to lock the enemy, switch enemy, fire weapon 1, fire weapon 2. Cat Explorer is an impressive VR game designed for the demonstration of the hand gesture tracking device Leap Motion. In this game, the player can see the accurate tracking of his hands and subtly interact with the virtual world. This immersive method of control does not only enhance the immersiveness directly, but also unlocks lots of possibilities of the UI design and the puzzle designs. Last but not least, motion sickness is the most crucial issue in VR games. It is capable to destroy the immersiveness with ease. Although there is no medical proof for the pathogenesis of motion sickness, there is a very well recognized guess, desynchrony. It means that the information of motion received by your eyes in the virtual world is not compatible to the evidences collected by the other parts of your body. It is really hard to predict the motion sickness without a large amount of experiments, because the standard varies for different individuals. the VR game developers have been constantly trying to eliminate the motion sickness, and they have made a lot of customizations. There are hardware customizations, such as interpupillary distance, the focus distance, a better resolution, a larger refresh rate, and less latency in the motion tracking. As I mentioned, most of these hardware customizations was innovated by the first product of Oculus, DK1, and they have been constantly improved. And there are also software customizations, including the VSync technology, which allows the graphic cards to coordinate the refresh rate with the screens in order to prevent the tearing of images in rapid motion. However, only VSync is not good enough for the customization in motion. There is another technology called motion blurring. This technology automatically blurs the screen while a rapid motion is going on. And this is much more compatible with the habit of humans' eyes and reduce the motion sickness. The third technology is called multi-resolution shading. This technology tracks the direction of the player's sight and only provides a high resolution in the place that the player is looking at. So the software can save the performance to provide a better frame per second. Lastly, because most human beings does not have perfect eyesight, so the objects in a distance might look blurry, but it's not true in virtual reality. So there is another technology called distance blurring. Most of these software customizations are done by the drivers of the VR devices, and only some of them is done by the game engine and the game developers. Besides the hardware and software customizations, there are also customizations could be done by the game designers to reduce the motion sickness. There are three elements to pay attention with: the method of movement, the dynamic design, and the duration of the experiences. To begin with, the smooth movement of the HND camera without the player's body movement is almost guaranteed to produce motion sickness. So the game designers always choose to restrict the players within a small area and only use teleport to move the virtual play zone when necessary. However, frequent use of teleport itself could break the immersiveness. What's more, there are experiences that couldn't be achieved without smooth movement. In this situation, there is a trade-off between the immersiveness and motion sickness. For instance, in Everest VR, there are experiences of climbing the cliff. In order to minimize the motion sickness, it provides the players with ropes and snow picks to hold on and let themselves to decide the pace. There is another game called To the Top, which is simulating the experience of rock climbing. Both To the Top and my prototype about Attack on Titans are using the trick of dynamic design to reduce the sense of motion sickness. In both of the games, the players are only allowed to make smooth movements in virtual world with intense arms activities. I believe that this dynamic cannot directly reduce the motion sickness. However, the physical exhaustion can help the player to ignore it. Furthermore, a good dynamic design could also reduce the motion sickness in a fixed play zone. This is a game called Racket NX VR. Basically, you are standing in a sphere room, and it is simulating an experience very similar to the squash. As much as the table tennis VR I introduced, this experience is making the players sweaty and exhausted in a good way. It is amazing that the sense of motion sickness is constantly depressed until I got exhausted and took off the helmet. I became very dizzy after the experience, but I was not conscious of it during the 30 minutes. The last negative instance is Fallout 4 VR. In order to minimize the motion sickness, yet still maintain the experience of exploring the Commonwealth, it chose to use short-distance teleport as the method of movement. But it was a disaster for me to use hundreds of teleport to reach my destination. Secondly, it has poor dynamic design, and the player is standing still to shoot all the time. Last but not least, the duration of experiences is too long. As we all know, it could be dangerous to save and exit in the Commonwealth. However, it might take hours to explore and return to the settlement. After hours of experiences in Fallout 4 VR, I am convinced that they did great customizations to port Fallout 4 into virtual reality. But it's a pity that Fallout 4 is originally designed as an awful VR game. As I mentioned in the representation section, the favor of experiences has declined in the recent years. After the release of HTC Vive, the VR game developers are so excited about the new immersive controllers, and the proportion of the gameplay has increased. There are fewer and fewer games simulating the roller coasters, and the successful ones such as No Limit 2 provides the gameplay for adjusting the tracks. Another instance is No Man's Sky. Although it is a PC game, it has a VR version. When it was first released, it received a lot of negative reviews. Because the experience of exploring the infinite universe only seems to be attractive in the first 2 hours. However, in the last 2 years, the game developers continuously worked on the gameplay, and they received a success. I am convinced that another reason for the appreciation of gameplay is the shift of rivals. As a result of the slower increase of audience and a competitive platform, VR games competitor has shifted from video games to VR games themselves. Mr. Jack McCauley is one of the co-founders of Oculus, and he predicts that the revolution of VR devices will be as savory as what the PC has been through. There used to be a lot of companies developing PC, but only Apple and IBM existed till the end. This means that it still needs years or even decades for VR to become the dominant platform for games. And the situation of intense competition within VR games will continue. As I introduced in VR Revolutions, the immersive method of control have changed the VR game's demerit of gameplay into its merit. To begin with, although it is not feasible to walk in the virtual world like FPS games, the position tracking controllers grant players full control of the weapons and tools. Serious Sam VR perfectly fits this feature, which made it one of the top sellers in Steam VR. On the other hand, immersive controllers allow the players to interact with the environment subtly. For instance, in Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, player sits in front of a desk with a time bomb. However, the manual to defuse it is in possession of his friend, so he has to describe the bomb to his friend so that the friend could instruct him to defuse it. It is an exciting experience to race against the time while being really careful to interact with the object. Combining the use of tools and the interaction with the environment, the great freedom of puzzle design in VR games has led us to the game I Expect You to Die. Furthermore, now we even have VR games focused on gameplay. Fruit Ninja VR, for instance, and another bestseller in Steam VR, Beat Saber. In this music VR game, a series of blocks are coming towards the player following to the rhythm, and the player is supposed to cut them as half as possible according to the color and direction of the arrow. Let's talk about other advantages of VR games not mentioned in the representation and gameplay sections. The first and most significant advantage is sharing. Mr. Zuckerberg once said in an interview, "We are going to move towards a world that eventually you can capture the whole experience you are in and be able to send it to someone." This idea reminds me of the virtual office of Bunzap. Because we are in 21st century now, it is much cheaper to transmit bits than atoms. Currently, there are many means of sharing utilizing VR. Firstly, iPhone VR cameras that directly captures the panoramic view is useful to share my travel with friends and parents. Besides, there are many commercial applications equipped with VR technologies. IKEA has published their VR and AR applications that allows the user to choose furniture at home. There are also applications that simulate the oil paint on your walls. And many museums all over the world are building their VR experiences. Moreover, VR is also excellent to share your record of games. Although we cannot play Dota 2 in VR for now, the VR version provides us with several different means to observe the matches. Last time when we were trying the Sandbox VR, the most significant character I noticed was Sharing. The green background technology combined with the featured video generator was impressive. But there are still so many improvements waiting to be accomplished. First of all, we can improve the video generator by collecting and analyzing the data during the game. For instance, the time of rapid firing speed, quick damage rate, and even most haptic VAS signals could suggest where the most intense battle was. Secondly, we can record the first-person view of the mighty boss, and it will be an excellent angle to capture the reactions of the players. Thirdly, most of the current social networks are providing methods to view panoramic view and videos with headphones. We can make good advantage of this feature and put some virtual VR cameras in the playzone. For instance, capturing the panoramic view of a player when he dies could powerfully show the intenseness on the battlefield. Lastly, as far as I'm aware, platformization is crucial in every company's revolution. So I would like to suggest Sandbox VR produce an application that helps the user to obtain their videos. The app is not only acting as VR video players, but also gives the user quick access to their experiences and make it easier for them to share with friends. With the app, we could also ask for permission of the GPS information, which allows us to push the advertisements of the nearest branch. There are two reasons that we need to pay attention to the uncertainty design in VR games. On the one hand, the short experiences for keeping immersiveness require more replayability. On the other hand, immersive methods of control give us more freedom in uncertainty design. A notable instance is the cat sorter. In this game, you will find yourself standing in place similar to a factory, and the belt in front of you is transporting cats to you. However, these cats are usually not correct, because the cat may have wings, or pig's tails, or dog's nose. It is your job to tear the wrong parts off and pick a correct one to put back. The belt of cats is already an uncertainty design. Furthermore, after you sort a cat, you can choose to put it back on the belt so it will transport it to the sucker and submit. Besides, you could also shoot it to the basket in a long distance. High risk, high rewards. Last time, I discussed with Mr. Allen about the significance of replayability of Sandbox VR. We agreed that it could be a great economy to motivate the players to come again and put their friends together with him. So I suggested 5 paths of uncertainty design. Firstly, adjusting the navigation and spawn points of the enemies could make the experience unpredictable. Secondly, Easter eggs. We could afford medals to the players who accomplished the experience, and they could use it to unlock golden skins or upsize their magazines when they come again. Thirdly, it was unexpected that the captain in The Curse of Davy Jones was typically having more fun than the other team members. I am convinced that roleplay design can not only solve this issue, but also encourage the player to try the game again. Fourthly, I suggested that we can allow the players to choose the higher difficulty. They may lose the chance of challenging the final boss. This could also be a motivation for them to form a 6-people team. Lastly, similar to the game Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes I introduced, we can set a director role for solving the puzzles. If nobody tried this game before, the supervisor staff would do it. After the game, the players may become looking forward to pulling their friends back and instructing them. There is no doubt that seeing friends in virtual reality is attractive. But we need to be alerted that the network delay is a vital issue. Failure of maintaining the performance of VR games will cause intense motion sickness. PvE and PvE are two major paths of multiplayer games. I have already introduced my idea to both Mr. Allen and Mr. Chris. The first drawing is showing the concept of cooperation among squads all over the world. In the second picture, after splitting the play zone into two parts, players are fighting with ranged weapons and build their own covers. The last concept is forming a fencing court in virtual world and allow the players to have combats with various combinations of melee weapons, such as shield and spear, sword and flail, and so on. It is shown by the first project I experienced about VR. The HMD is originally comfortable to combine with AR technologies. HTC Vive Pro have added 3 cameras in front as toys for game developers to play with. And as shown in the game Cat Explorer, Leap Motion also have the feature of RGB video capturing. Nevertheless, I am convinced that all-in-one machines are the future of this advantage. GameTrend is one of the most potent sources that boosted the success of VR games. There is no doubt that the movie Ready Player One has pushed the VR games onto the top of the game trend of all games. And within the game trend of VR games, we have relative small size but more active and more affluent audiences. Last but not least, there are still so many opportunities in VR games. Most of these blanks are not considered as innovations in video games, but still waiting to be delivered to VR games by developers. Thank you very much for attending this presentation, and I really appreciate your feedback.